People all laughed and they called me names. Why's it so tough and the world so lame? Can I have some cash and a ride down to the arcade? This morning blue, I stayed up till 2. People stare at me like I'm trapped in a zoo. Why's it so tough and the world so lame? Can I have some cash and a ride down to the arcade? Some cash and a ride down to the arcade. Can I have some cash and a ride down to the arcade? Can I have some cash and a ride down to the arcade? Trust, do I look too much? Why's it so tough and the world so lame? Can I have some cash and a ride down to the arcade? This evening blue had nothing to do but lay around with my thoughts of you. Why's it so tough and the world so lame? Can I have some cash and a ride down to the arcade? Some cash and a ride down to the arcade. Can I have some cash and a ride down to the arcade? Can I have some cash and a ride down to the arcade?
capture your image at City Hall. Realize they listen whenever you make a call. If you want a revolution, I'll really give it to y'all. Brave is the army that bands against bands of dead presidents, determining life of mankind of cancerous. How we breathe vapors, green got us bleeding in streets for cheap paper. Assemble the masses, melt the plastic compound, realign when the shit gets drastic. Lit the veil when the system's unmasked. It's just another pyramid scheme of government racket. The power with the power with Charles Jurassic. Gnashing T-Rex with covert tactics. Rise from the ashes, take back the atlas.
Bring the madness.
Bring the madness. There's a pyramid of power with eyes that can see it all. Cameras to capture your image at City Hall. Realize they listen whenever you make a call. If you want a revolution, I'll really give it to you.
Brave is the army that bands against bands of dead presidents, determining life of mankind of cancerous. How we breathe vapors, we got us bleeding in streets for cheap paper.
Assemble the masses, melt the plastic compound, realign when the shit gets drastic. Lit the veil when the system's unmasked.
What is up, Level Up Nation, and welcome to Monday, February 1st edition of LvLUp Live, your home for gaming and esports news, brought to you by OTN Media. My name is Fiasco. You can call me John. This other guy can't. And that other guy, of course, is the king of the courtside, but you can also call him Joey. What's up, buddy?
John, it has been all right. We've got quite a bit of snow today. I know your office lost power a couple times. Hopefully that is not the case with the show tonight.
I just told you can't call me by them. You can't call me by my real name. You have to call me Fiasco.
You don't. I'll
listen
call you
very
Big
well.
Daddy J. How about?
Whoa, I don't like that. Stranger danger. Yeah, so the DC area, the DMV, if you will, you know, Joey, if you're not from this area, you would think that, 4 to 6 inches of snow, for some people, that's a lot. That is enough to shut down this entire region for days, apparently. But especially when you add ice on top of it, then the drivers that are already bad in this area become even worse. In League of Legends perspective, I would put drivers in the DMV area at a silver 3. When snow and ice and rain hits, I'm going to have to drop that down to a plastic 4 is how bad it gets in this area. And that's an insult to plastic 4 drivers out there, Joey. But yes, anywho, Nation, what's up? Welcome. It's LvLUp Live. It's Monday. It's February 1st. Joey, January's already gone. We're 1 month in to 2021, and it's not much better than 2020. But you know what is better than 2020? Is following the show on social media. And if you've been watching since 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, numbers are difficult, you'll be following at LvLUp Live on Twitter and Facebook. That's at LvLUp Live. And while you're on Twitter, follow Joey. He's got some spicy takes, including some inside information here, and he's going after well-known esports journalists like Slasher. So you definitely want to check that out as well. I'll let Joey talk about that a little later on in the show. But while you're there, follow me at Fiasco as well. If you're listening to the podcast later on down the road, they'll be in the show notes for you below. And Nation, as always, if you do choose to listen to the podcast version, it's available on Spotify, iTunes, and Google Play and Stitcher. And since you're listening to the podcast version of the LvLUp Podcast, why not leave us a review? Reviews do go a long way, not only helping more people be introduced to the show, but giving us critical feedback that we need to make the show what you, our listeners and viewers, want. So any feedback is always appreciated. All right, Joey, it's Monday. It's actually National Get Up Day. Which is interesting. It's an opportunity to share inspiring stories, Joey, of perseverance. So before we hit our topics, I'm throwing a curveball in here today. I want a gaming version of National Get Up Day for you, sir. When did you have to pick yourself up after you fell? And why is this game you're choosing League of Legends?
Wow, that's ironic because I feel like this could really help Google today after their announcement.
Seriously, you know?
I don't know. I mean, I guess if we really want to go with League of Legends, it's that moment when you get in that stretch of like 2 or 3 losses in a row. You commit, 35, 45 minutes to each single game of Summoner's Rift. And then trying to find your way to climb once again after that is difficult. As far as recently, so I've been playing through Hellblade. It was a game I never actually played through. And there are definitely some difficult bosses in that in terms of, I'm not a big horror game fan, and that definitely has some of its creepier elements. So getting over that aspect of it, as well as hearing all these voices in your head as you go. So overcoming kind of the, I think it's psychosis is what that game plays off of, and trying to stimulate a bit of that with the mind control aspects of the sound, which is really cool to experience, but also really freaky at the same time. So I'm going to go with that, overcoming that to take down one of the first bosses in that game so far.
Well, so Joey, for those of us who hear voices in our heads constantly, that's not anything to be worried about. It's completely normal, Joey. What was that? No, he's not ready for that. Okay, so Joey, that was a great example of National Get Up Day. So Joey, don't shake your head. What are we talking about today, Joey? I know you want to hit on some of that.
Absolutely. We are talking about a new co-ed roster coming to Valorant. Pretty exciting stuff there from Evil Geniuses. We have some roster moves as far as drops and acquisitions, partnerships. We're going to dive a bit into Google Stadia and the news that came out today. We're going to talk a little bit about Sammy and SEGA and what's going on with their restructuring, diving into MLB The Show, which will be coming home or maybe to a new home at Xbox as well as PlayStation this year. Some cool features included into that. Blooper teams, The Medium, Halo Infinite, their Inside Infinite update, the LCS lock-in tournament, and much more.
Let's see, I'm trying to get my BTTV. Nope, see, I can't even get it. So there. Try to put Dance Blob in there, and I can't get it. Or is it Blob Dance? I think it's Blob Dance. Anywhere, I'll figure it out sooner or later. Joey, we have our topics, but that does not mean we can start the show yet. Not even close yet. Of course, we have to touch on our drink of choice on this Monday, February 1st. Joey, your beverage, please, to kick off the month of February.
Okay, I have a picture on my phone here. I'm drinking a Breezy Frog Sour Double IPA with its flavoring of cranberries, pineapples, coconut, and vanilla. The reason the picture is on my phone because I went with a Stein tonight.
Cool.
Aslan's the best. This is Aslan Beer Company again. It's the last one, so I'll switch things up once again. I don't know if we'll go back to some hard liquor here and there, or maybe pick up a new 6-pack. But yeah, we're still kicking with Aslan. One more to go on this pack.
Who would have thought that? Oh, I did have it wrong. It is Blob Dance. So we're gonna throw this in chat again to see if I can get this to work. I think it might be down. I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe it might be on my end. Who knows? Anywho, Joey, I had a very long weekend, shocker, of consuming adult beverages. So I'm taking it a little bit easy today, just going with the Truly Black Cherry Lemonade Hard Seltzer. If Blake's in the chat, come at me, bro. Come at me. Come on. Let's do this. I don't want to hear anything about drinking hard seltzers. They're absolutely amazing, and they're quite possibly the healthiest version of alcohol, if there is such a thing out there.
What is the sugar in that thing? It's at least a gram.
1 gram of sugar is not even that bad. Joey, it's less than 1% grams of sugar, added sugar. Look at that.
Yeah, that's not that bad.
No, it's not bad at all. It's only 45 milligrams of sodium. And it actually has 4 milligrams of calcium. So there, it's actually healthy for your bones, Joey.
Wow. There you go. Here. Some people drink milk. Others drink Truly Hard Lemonade.
Joey, it's the drink of champions. You can even have it for breakfast. Put it in your bowl of cereal. Come on. Sounds outstanding. Joe, we have our topics. We have our drinks. We have a whole brand new month here in 2021 in the month of February. Joey, let's kick off the month right. Let's get right into gaming and esports news. Let's go.
Before we do, we're going to dive a bit more into what you just said there, guys. I think our next charity event, we're going to have John eat cereal with Truly Hard Lemonade in it. If we hit a certain donation tier, because he thinks it would go well in cereal. So
I'll do
we'll
it.
Go ahead and make him test that theory live on the air at some point.
I'll do it right now, Joey. I'll run upstairs and grab some cereal. I don't care. Like, it doesn't bother me one bit.
That is
Come at
truly
me, bro.
disturbing. Ew. Okay, let's jump into some roster acquisitions. Just a couple of these today. Evil Geniuses has jumped into the Valorant fray. A lot of new teams and organizations jumping into that. This one in particular is a bit unique because it will be a co-ed team. It's going to feature 3 men and 2 women on the team. Potter, Osias, Temperature, Claudia, and Alexander. Team captain, Christine Potter-Chai. She's a 7-time CSGO world champion. She competed on teams like CLG Red, Rez Gaming, and a few others before taking a step back in 2020. Now, after taking that time off, reassessing things, she's decided to move from Counter-Strike Global Offensive over to Valorant. So we will be seeing, to my knowledge, the first big co-ed roster over in that scene. Again, 3 men and 2 women on this one, and Evil Geniuses taking the plunge.
I really hope.
Overall, I like this move. I know you're preoccupied with chat over there.
No, so friend of the show, Matt, just texted me some seltzers I really kind of hope are real. Looks like they're sour seltzers by the tried and true brand Natural Light, aka Natty Light. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. No, so, anytime there's a co-ed team, it's always a step forward for esports. It's one of those things where we've talked about it many times on the show, where esports truly is one of the only competitions, really, if you want to take the physical aspect out of competition, because there is no physical, demands there. You can't make the argument, oh, well, guys are stronger than girls or blah, 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 blah. It's truly a level playing field. It comes down to mechanics. It comes down to how well you understand the game, how well you play. We've seen this happen before, and I think it's a step in the right direction where there is a co-ed team, if you will, for not just Valorant, but we've seen it in other titles as well. It's a step forward in the right direction for esports, for including more people in the amazing community that is gaming and esports. So I think it's great, and I applaud Evil Geniuses for making the move.
And I could be wrong here. Chat could destroy me on this, but I believe this is the first time we see a mixed co-ed team like this. So typically it's either a full female roster or a full male roster. And then occasionally we get like one female player into a roster. I think like Geggery over in Shanghai Dragons. You had Ramia, I believe was her name, over on, I think it was Renegades at the time. So usually you have one female player coming into a full male roster. This one being a little different in the sense that it has 2 female gamers. And I think that has a huge advantage to it in the sense that it's not just one person being different from the rest of the group. It's 2 people versus 3 people. So when different discussions come up, maybe they're going to feel different ways, or maybe the house is arranged differently. And that one person doesn't have to feel left out because they're living in a different house, or things are arranged differently because they're different from the other competitors. So overall, I think this is going to be a really good move in that sense because it's a pair. You're coming in with someone doing the same thing. You're not going to be set aside in anything because there is someone who's in the same situation as you. And I think that's going to have a very good strength when it comes to this roster. Oh, my cough is coming back here. This sour beer, John, is getting it nice. But yeah, I think, is there anything else you want to touch on with this? I think in particular, it's not like the biggest thing until we see them play, until we see them compete. But I think the general idea of it is a pretty good place to start. And with Valorant being so new, I think it's a great time to move into it as well.
For sure. And I think, the idea of it being multiple women on the same team really does make a huge difference. Like the examples you said before, Joey, where it's only one woman on the team and you're in a gaming house full of guys, very intimidating. It's a very different atmosphere. Joey, let's be real here. We've gone to college. We've had guy roommates before. We have lived with other guys. I would not want anybody to have to be subjected to being in a single house of like 8 dudes in it. Not a good time. So, it's almost like a little bit of a support system. You have 2 women on the team. It creates kind of that support system. So it's not as awkward for just having, one woman in a gaming house. Granted, gaming houses are kind of like, yes, they're still the staple, but they're not the future. The future, we're going to see more of a business like where you have, like we've said before, you have your training centers and then you have your dormitories, if you will, your areas where you live. So that's kind of the future. That's kind of the direction esports is going. But as for now, with gaming houses still being one of the primary areas for housing teams, having multiple women on the roster is a great idea. Not just from a safety aspect, but just from a comfortability, if that's a word, aspect as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things you're eventually going to see is some female gamers are going to absolutely smash male gamers in certain games. And I think one of the things that holds them back right now is the general population. You look at males, I could be wrong on this. I think last I checked, it was like 65-35, something like that, with females in the higher echelon of play. And as you cut that percentage down, as more female gamers enter into the scene, then it's going to become a little bit more tipsy-topsy as far as what that actually looks like on a 50-50 scale. So eventually, as more females enter into gaming and enter into the competitive level of gaming, I think you will eventually see more enter into the scene as well. Now, I think Valorant, again, is a perfect title to do this because it's new, it's up and coming. You have a lot of people deciding between CSGO or Valorant or Overwatch. There's a lot of fluctuations between the scene right now, and there's a lot of holes to fill where potentially not only female gamers, but young rookie players can also get a good shot into these lineups. And I think we'll see a lot of that come out this next year, especially as that Valorant scene continues to develop. So hopefully this is something that adds into more things later down the road. I think having those 2 female gamers, once again, is going to be a big advantage compared to 1 female gamer entering into a team. It's going to feel much more like a team environment and a lot less like, hey, it's 4 guys and 1 girl, and she has to do everything differently because these guys are guys and she's a girl, and she has to have different housing arrangements and different da-da-da-da. And I think this is one thing that's going to help cut down that barrier a bit more in professional gaming. Last roster move of the day, TSM has announced their departure from Fortnite. I think a lot of people are on the I guess the edge right now with Fortnite. It's one of those titles that has a lot of money involved. Epic is throwing tons and tons of money. Tencent, who is the majority share owner there, throwing in tons of money as well. So the prize pools are decent. The issue is the competitive structure. There's so much really RNG involved, not only in the qualifying process, but in the way tournaments play out as well. So a lot of people are thinking, well, hey, we could build out this stellar roster in a Valorant, a League of Legends, a whatever scene, and know the roster's good and know the tournament structure that's coming. Or we could throw our hat in and pick up some really talented solo queue players in Fortnite and see if they get lucky and eventually go on to win a few $1 million. That's one of the things a lot of teams are debating right now. TSM deciding to finally pull out of Fortnite with a thank you to their players, Macwood, Fernando, and SAF today. Overall, I think this is one of those scenes that has a lot of question marks, Jon, and you and I have hit on it before. It's not just Fortnite, it's Battle Royales in general. Apex Legends, the same issues over there. Call of Duty Warzone, the same type of thing. Tournaments are big and they're doing well, but from an organizational perspective, Fortnite, for example, doesn't really let you say much about your organization, doesn't let you wear a logo in the game. So that's one aspect that orgs are looking at. Like, what is our return really if no one ends up winning? That's a big negative for orgs. The other thing is, even if they do allow the different logos and the different representation of sponsors into the game or into, I guess, the player's cam or whatever involved in the game, there's still the setback of the randomness being involved in that aspect. So TSM stepping back doesn't surprise me. I also wouldn't be surprised if we see more big name orgs eventually step back from these Battle Royale titles, as still it seems like they're still trying to find themselves in general in the competitive esports scene. And I think this is one thing that we're going to have to see develop here in 2021.
I think the other thing that kind of is going against Fortnite is, it's great. Throw money at the tournaments all you want. Money doesn't make your game a popular esport title. It just makes you have one of the largest, cash prizes available. You can't sit there and make major changes to your game the night before a tournament. You can't come out and openly say, oh, well, we really don't care about the professional esports scene for this game. Now, yes, I get it. All the money for Fortnite was made on microtransactions from the casual player. Yes, I fully understand that and I totally get it. But this is a reason, or at least a part of the reason why organizations are pulling out, is because you've openly said as a developer, Epic, that you don't care about the esports scene, and then you back it up by making major changes to the game meta, adding items, taking away items, completely changing how the game could possibly be played. Again, it is heavily RNG based, but you can't make major changes like that prior to the tournament, like 2-3 nights before. We've seen tons of backlash in a lot of different communities and a lot of different leagues for changing the game even a week before or 2 weeks before a major tournament. Like, you have to give the professionals some time to perform at their best. I mean, you as a viewer, you do not want to see a pro figuring it out live on TV when they're playing for $3 million. Like, you want to see the best version of the game You want to see your favorite player play the best version of that game that you want to invest your time in. So, it makes no sense to make those changes, and Epic doesn't seem to have a problem with it. And if you're an organization, I can completely understand how that would rub you the wrong way. And you have to ask yourself, why do I want to put money into this if I can't brand my players, if I can't promote my organization, and if I have to be on the struggle bus trying to figure out if this game is going to change overnight or not. So just a couple things also to add in there as well, why Fortnite's not exactly doing so hot in the esports scene.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good point, and we don't have to expand on it too much more. But the whole weapon changing thing was definitely a big factor. I feel like I want to say they've gotten better at it, but it still feels like there is issues coming up here and there. I look to League of Legends. I mean, when you look at esports, CSGO and League of Legends are kind of your top two right now. And how do they do it? They delay patches. So the pro scene is usually playing one patch behind, mainly to give the pro players time to adjust. Like if we're going to add in this new champion or add in this major buff or change up this item in one significant way, let's give the guys a week to 2 weeks to get used to it, allow them to play solo queue, allow them to understand that item or those changes before we force them on a change to really go, or on a stage to go up against it. Like Viego, for example, the Rune King got released in League of Legends. He's not going to jump right into the pro scene. If he does, all these players can be like, oh, what are his abilities? Like, obviously they know the basics, but on a pro level, knowing the exact, really the measurements of how much ability power versus how much damage versus every little thing like that, or how long a stun lasts, every little thing like that is such a huge difference maker at pro level play. And unless they have the ability to really play with it for a set amount of time, it's just not enough to adjust. So when a patch comes out Tuesday or Wednesday and pro players get it, they're not going to be ready to go by Friday to play these games with this new character coming out. So I do like the fact that Riot gives time for those players to adjust. CSGO does a good job with it as well. I'm sure Valorant has done the same thing. So as we go forward, again, it's mainly battle royales that are a little bit out of the loop here, but they're not the only games making these last minute changes. And I hope, as John said, we start to see a little bit more of this adjustment period for pro players moving forward. Jumping into Google, John. So we had some news drop today from Google Stadia. They've decided to shut down their internal Stadia game studios. This is extremely sad because you have about 150 developers now potentially having to find jobs, depending if Google ends up doing some restructuring. They didn't really give a ton of details on that aspect. But the other side here, and I mean, it's partly to toot our own horn, partly to just say, like, Google, I mean, this is just kind of what you do with certain technologies. We've been calling it for, I feel like, 9 months now that we did not expect Google Stadia to last, or for Google to say, hey, internal studios aren't working. Let's dive into buying different pre-made studios that are already out there and find ways to adapt them to our platform. We really don't know which direction Google is going to take here. We do know they're shutting down the internal studios. That is now in writing. It's done. What does that mean, though? I can't expand too much, but I've heard their names in different talks as far as acquisitions, some of those being big publishers, some of those being smaller studios. So they've been in these talks, but every single talk I've heard them in has also included Microsoft and Amazon. So this could mean Google says, hey, we're losing to Microsoft and Amazon in every talk. We're just going to drop this completely and become fully third party. Or this could be Google saying, hey, the internal studio and development stuff is just not working for us. Let's just compete on the third-party scale, try to bring in these developers, and then in a sense run it like Tencent. So they can own these developers or own majority shares of these developers and then have them do their own thing. Again, a little bit of Google funding, a little bit of Google direction here and there. But for the most part, those studios will just be developing exclusive Google titles for Stadia. I don't know which direction they take. If I had to guess, John, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, I think this is the beginning of the end of Google Stadia.
Oh, I have to totally agree. Google Stadia was almost doomed from the get-go. It became a gigantic meme from day one, just with how horribly it was rolled out. Like it was like they were trying to rush it. And, I get it. Cloud-based gaming, we talk about it all the time. Cloud-based gaming is going to be a major factor in gaming going forward. But for whatever reason, Google just couldn't do it. Google Stadia was not a thing that could just really take off. Yeah, I mean, there are some Google Stadia, fanboys and girls out there. Very few and far between, it feels like. But I feel like, Google Stadia was going off the old PR strategy of any PR is good PR. And I can't remember the last time Google Stadia had good PR. Anytime we talk about it on the show here, Joe, it's always something negative happening, whether it's connection issues or just games aren't working or it's not compatible with certain. There are so many things that have gone wrong with Google Stadia. And then when you take a look at its game developing, now this is something that even Amazon has struggled with. It's very difficult to kind of open up your own studio and jump headfirst into a very well-established developer world for games already. I mean, you're going up against some major names and some major players there in the game developing world, and you're essentially starting from scratch. It didn't work with Amazon, and they may just go out on the acquiring route. Google tried it as well, and it's not working either. Just the whole Google Stadia experience hasn't worked. And at some point in time, Google is going to have to cut the cord and say, hey, look, you know, we're losing money on this. Is it really worth for us to keep doing this? Or do we take the IP? Do we take that property that we made, and do we sell it off for whatever profit and wash our hands of it and call it a day? Do they get acquired? There's a lot of different things that can go into this. But yes, Joey, I do agree. I think this, if it's not already the beginning, this is the beginning of the end for Google Stadia for sure.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of the things we've seen with Google before, whether it's a technology product or whether it's some kind of service they offer. I think most recently Google One or Google Plus or whatever it was called is one of these particular things where they're like, hey, we're going to create this social network and it's going to compete head on with Facebook and MySpace and whoever else was out there at the time. And then it came out and it's like, okay, this is interesting. And it never picked up steam. And then a couple years later, they're like, yeah, we're just going to kill this off tomorrow. And it's just done. And that's what happened with it. No one's heard of it since. And it hasn't really come up. And it just, again, I hope Stadia doesn't go that route, because I think it is nice to have competitors on the market, specifically a new market like cloud gaming, where it's kind of just NVIDIA and Microsoft. You have Amazon jumping in now, a little bit of PlayStation here and there. And then you had Google with Stadia. So I think losing a competitor could definitely damage the scene overall. But then again, you can argue with consoles, Sony and Microsoft have been enough to push each other as well with just two. So again, back and forth there. I think the biggest thing here is you're losing 150 developers. That sucks for those guys. It's a real bummer that they're just kind of being let go in this sense. I hope Google gave them a bit more of a heads up if this ends up being the case, with them not rolling into the greater company, but rather gone completely. The other thing here is we really don't know what Google is doing. I think John and I are both predicting that it probably will eventually be a shutdown of Stadia, but they could completely turn things around. They could say, hey, we're completely investing into those third-party studios, and that could be the strategy for Stadia going forward. But for now, we're kind of going to have to wait and see how all that plays out. What we do know based on what they stated, Stadia service will continue and the platform will continue to see third-party games published on it. Again, no mention of exclusivity, but that could be a thing. And the main focus will be on partnering with outside companies. Additionally, the prominent game producer Jade Raymond, who is one of the heads of Stadia, former founder actually of Ubisoft Toronto as well as Motive Studios, has left the company. So she's one of those big names out there that your Microsofts and your Amazons and your Sonys and everyone like that is looking to potentially end up bringing on board as well to either run a new studio or to revamp some of the studios they currently have.
Okay, Joey. So obviously this is a hot topic, and there's a lot of spicy takes all across social media. And of course, Slasher, has to throw a word in there. Don't cover your face. You don't know what's coming. Slasher goes out and puts out a tweet, essentially comparing Stadia to Mixer, Microsoft's, which I thought was a pretty decent platform, but overall it didn't hold up. Streaming platform. In his tweet says, quote, Google shutting down its internal Stadia game studio. Just like with Mixer, Google and Microsoft are both really great at convincing hundreds of people to come to work for their new gaming platform, only for it to fail miserably and then leave everyone out to dry. So of course, I have to go through and take a look at all the spicy takes, the replies, the quoted retweets. And I came across this guy, Joey. I've never heard of him before. I feel like he may have copyright infringed on your username here, but it's funny enough. It's at Courtside King. He goes, a rough comparison to make here by Slasher. Rod does love himself some Mixer jokes though. The biggest difference being that one, Mixer was around for much longer, and two, all Mixer staffs were offered positions in other departments to stay on board. Unfortunately, not the case here. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a very valid point. But regardless, I think it is a disturbing trend of these companies wanting to be innovative, and wanting to move forward and try to develop the next best thing in streaming or gaming, and then kind of just slamming the door shut when a lot of people put their, change jobs or livelihood and everything. It kind of reminds me of like the XFL, if you will, this, last year when it just kind of shut the doors automatically and just folded overnight, and hundreds of people were out of a job as well. But yes, aside from the dark comparisons that Slasher made, I think he had some very valid points there in that tweet, Joey, in regards to how Google and Microsoft both handled the situation differently.
Yeah, and I think both need to be slammed in their own ways. Like, we all know I stand for Microsoft here and there. I think the biggest thing that got on my nerves with the way he phrased that tweet was the fact that they left all of their employees out for dry, when actually Microsoft ended up keeping all of their employees hired and rolling them into different divisions, most of them going over to Microsoft Teams. So it's just very different in that sense, with Google saying, hey, 150 developers, you no longer have a job. And then with Microsoft saying, you guys are no longer working for Mixer, but we still have jobs for you. So that to me is the big difference there. With that being said, I don't like the way either one of them approach certain ways. On the Mixer side, I believe people got a month or two notice ahead of time, which is great. But the big issue with me is the notice for streamers. I believe streamers only got like a month notice or something like that, which again, it's a month, it's 30 days, and that's more than 2 weeks that you would get at a normal business or whatever if you were let go. But at the same point, it's one of those things that's like, okay, people are building their livelihood on your platform, and now they have to find a way. Maybe John only listens to, I don't know, John Doe, the streamer, every once a month or something. And John ends up missing that one stream where he could have heard the notice of him moving over to Twitch. That's a huge bummer. So if you give people a little bit more time, give the streamers a little bit more of a heads up, allow them to spend their currency, get their checks a little bit earlier, give more advance notice to their followers, I think that would have been a nice respect for Microsoft. Again, a month is not a bad amount of time, but I personally would have rather seen, like, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months, where they could have had more advance notice to maybe stream on both platforms and help ease that transition. On the Google side, it feels like, again, we don't know what they told the developers internally. They could have given more of a heads up as far as what we are hearing right now. But at least from, I mean, there's a significant number of developers out there that are saying, like, this is just their first time finding out, or they found out just a couple days ago that Google has decided to roll this up. So in terms of advance notice and in terms of preparation, it feels like Google maybe on the C level made some big decisions a while out, but at least on the developer level, it didn't really translate as cleanly as we did see with some of these other shutdowns. It bugs me. But again, like, it frustrates me that you and I and a number of other people saw this coming ahead of time. It's one of those things that Google has done in the past with new technology. They'll invest in and they'll buy in pretty heavily, and they'll make it sound like the next big thing since sliced bread. And then they come out and it might not go exactly the way they planned, and they end up cutting it early. Whether it be, again, like Google One or Google Plus or whatever it was called, where it just kind of slips under a couple days later, or whether it be something like Stadia, where, again, it sounds like they're still going to support it, but it's a bit of an empty promise that I really don't know how much I trust Google on moving forward. Anything else on Google Stadia for this episode, sir? I'm sure we'll hear more throughout the year as things get a little bit more cleaned up and developed.
Over under 6 months before Google Stadia is gone.
I will go over. I think it lasts at least another year. And again, I don't know if it's gone completely. There is still that tiny little slice where they could end up buying in and trying to outbid Amazon and Microsoft for different publishers, and could potentially take that more Tencent-like route. So again, I would probably put it at a very low percentage. If I was betting on this particular game, I would not put my chips on that particular square. With that being said, it is a possibility still out there as well.
And Joey would rather invest in Dogecoin than put his money on Google at the moment. It's fine.
Yeah, at least Dogecoin is going to the moon.
To the moon.
Google, who knows as far as their gaming corporation aspects. But speaking of corporations, Sammy Corp and SEGA Group Corp. John, I don't understand half of this, so we're just going to dive in the best we can and then move from there. They've decided to perform a strategic split/restructure. The term split comes up quite a bit, but so does the term merger. So again, you're going to have to take this a bit with a grain of salt, especially with the original press release being in Japanese as well and translated over from it. In quotes, the group has been working on structural reforms to transform the structure into one that is adapted to the external environment, end quote. The signing of the split contract is set to be completed by the end of March 2021, with the merger in effect April 1st, 2021. So again, a lot to chew here, a lot to really clarify as far as this document goes, because there are a lot of specific terms that almost, I mean, I want to say they kind of weigh against each other in the way it is written. I don't know what this means overall. The way I'm understanding it is that Sammy, the overarching business that kind of merged into SEGA, is splitting up. So Sammy is known for, I think they do comics, they do a bunch of arcades, different things like that in Japan, while Sega overlooks the IPs of the actual Sega gaming company. With them splitting, it's kind of brought up a few more of those rumors that we heard again earlier on in the fall, where Microsoft was possibly looking at acquiring Sega. Now with this split taking place, John, do you think this is more like Konami where they're just restructuring, or do you think this could be opening up from an acquisition either from Microsoft, Sony, or someone else?
That's a great question. With almost no information out there as to what in the world this really means or what's going on, it's kind of hard to tell. It wouldn't surprise me if this opens the door for a Sega acquisition, whether it's by a Microsoft, whether it's by an Amazon, whether it's by some major player that's looking to get a legendary studio like Sega. It's a great question. You would have to imagine with Sammy Corp being a large business, which is interesting, Joey. Sammy Corp's actually known for their pachinko machines, which, think of it as like a different version of a pinball machine if you don't know what a pachinko is, or just Google it. But it's interesting, one, the partnership between the two to begin with, but now with them splitting up between Sega and Sammy being their own separate group now, I feel like this raises more questions for Sega than anything, because now they're going to be losing that major player in Sammy Corp. Sammy Corp, obviously a very, very large organization that has made a lot of money that was really helping back Sega. Really outside of developing games, Sega's really struggled to kind of hold on to their grasp of the market worldwide. Like, you had the Sega Game Gear, you had Sega Genesis, you had Sega Dreamcast. Sega used to develop, all these consoles as well on top of the games that they put out, and then obviously they lost the console wars there. And then, now they're just trying to put games out there. But really, in comparison to what we've seen other developers do, Sega really kind of has been falling along the wayside here. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think it does open the door for talks of acquisition. And I think those rumors for Microsoft, who's trying to expand their Asian footprint, this could be a big opening door for them to really get a foot settled in Japan.
Yeah, I'm all over the place on this one. Part of the issue is my translations from Japanese pretty much stop at reading subtitles on animes. I can't really dive too much into actually how these things are translated. So it gets a bit difficult in the wording and some of the wording in the English translation as far as restructuring versus splitting versus merging, et cetera, et cetera. Overall, if I'm understanding this right, they're splitting up the two businesses. They're still under the same umbrella, but the gaming division or corporation is pretty much running its stuff sideways and parallel to what's happening with Sammy Corp. So again, that, like you said, John, it does make it a lot cleaner if there is an acquisition that does come through. And it's kind of quick too, with the merger ending on April 1st. That's just about a 2 months worth of time there. So it could mean things are moving quickly. Now, going into like the speculative, putting on the detective hat, you look at Microsoft, they've been hiding things in different pictures. Like we saw it with the Series S and Phil Spencer stuff. We saw it with Indiana Jones, with Todd Howard and Bethesda. As we look back more and more, if you look at like the July conference, I believe, for Microsoft, someone was wearing a Sonic t-shirt. You look back a couple more months, there was a picture of a Sonic stuffed animal found at Microsoft headquarters in a tweet. If you look a little while back, Sonic was drinking a green drink, and they had like an X shaped out of paper behind it on like a Sega tweet a while back. So again, these could just be little teasers, and it could just be lining up with the different thoughts of fans, because Microsoft has done these teasers before, particularly in the past year. Again, it could be something more where it is teasing at that potential Microsoft acquisition, especially with the way things are lining up here. But again, Nintendo's another company that when you look at Microsoft, they're going to have trouble acquiring in Japan, because Japan doesn't really like the idea of being taken over by US companies. You look at Nintendo, and I believe Mario and Sonic had like an Olympic game together. I think he might have appeared in a Mario tennis game before. So there's definitely been that relationship, at least with the Sega IP and Nintendo before, where we could potentially see them swoop in as a Japanese company as well. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't even know if this is actually a split versus a merger of what exactly is going on, depending on how well this translation was done. But if someone does acquire them, I would not be surprised to see Microsoft if it's worldwide, or even a Sony or a Nintendo if it does end up staying in Japan. There's a lot of good IP there. Sega with Sonic, Persona is under there, Atlas and all those titles. Sega's been around for a very long time. And as you said, Game Gear was another one. There were a number of titles associated with that. So this would be a big get. Again, not the most popular games, I guess, in today's day and age. Like Persona did very well. Sonic still does very well. But a lot of those games have kind of fallen off to the wayside in a sense. So it could be a kind of a cool idea to revive some of these old IPs. But given the comparison to, like, I don't know, Insomniac with Spider-Man or From Software with Elden Ring and Dark Souls, it's not necessarily the biggest of acquisitions in terms of IP content in and of itself, unless you look at that vault. Anything else here on Sega and a possible acquisition coming through?
We'll have to wait to see what in the world comes out. That is
absolutely
tough to make a call without more information between the two.
I know we need some better subtitles on the Sega anime over here, but we'll go ahead and follow up with that one later on. John, I know you're kind of excited for this one, or at least I hope you're excited for this one, because we will be hitting the diamonds together this year, depending on the platform we're both playing on. MLB The Show is not only headed to PlayStation, but Xbox as well for the first time ever. It will also include cross-play and cross-progression. So I think this is huge that we're seeing a Sony-developed title coming to Xbox. This is the first one ever, to my knowledge, doing that, in the first ever MLB The Show title coming to Xbox. But in addition to that, they're holding back nothing. They are coming out, putting it on the platform, but also giving cross-play and cross-progression. This is something we've seen Sony really hit back forever on. When Fortnite still gave cross-platform play between PC and Switch and Xbox, Sony came out and said, we're going to investigate this and see how it is safety-wise for our players versus Xbox Live and Nintendo Switch and da-da-da-da. And they did their thing, and a couple months later, they eventually allowed it. They've been very slow to pick up crossplay since then. Minecraft has been allowed, a few other titles here and there, but for the most part, it is Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and PC that are fully linked with one another. Sony on launch coming out with crossplay for this game as well.
Yeah. So first off, welcome Xbox players to the world of the show. Glad to have you on the Baseball Diamond as well. You're quickly going to realize how awful multiplayer is online with the show. There's nothing like trying to time a fastball, and as the ball's coming to you, it glitches out because there's a connection difference between you and the player you're going with, and you swing, and lo and behold, you were like 3 seconds late on the ball regardless. So yeah, good luck. Enjoy. Hope you guys are happy about it. No, I think it's great. Xbox has really struggled to try to find a good baseball simulation. There's a lot of baseball arcade games, but when it comes to a simulation game like Madden or NHL or FIFA, Xbox really didn't have anything. So it's a smart move. We talked about it here on the show about Major League Baseball really making this change, saying, "Hey, look, we want everyone to be exposed to Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball has a massive issue when it comes to reaching out to the younger audience. Baseball is considered a boomer sport, as much as I hate to say that because I am a baseball fan. But they do have an issue with trying to get the attention of millennials and Gen Z. I believe the last statistic I saw, like millennials, we hardly even register anything on Nielsen for people watching baseball. It's ridiculous. But that goes to show you how far baseball has fallen behind when it comes to, streaming games or when it comes to finding different ways to engage with the younger generations. We saw last year, especially during the pandemic shortened season, and really in 2019, we really saw an expansion of it too, of games coming to streaming platforms. But even then it wasn't enough. So Major League Baseball kind of forced Sony's hand here to make the show available for Xbox as well. Now, I believe when we talked about earlier today, Joey, they were aiming for 2022 as really that golden date. And they're coming out with 2021. So that's a massive win for Xbox fans, especially if you have the new console as well. It's a great series. Unlike FIFA from EA, the show has improved year after year after year to a point. Whether you just like playing a season, you like playing a manager mode, whether you like playing a player, it is a fun, interactive game, regardless of the mode you play. The Ultimate Team that they essentially have is really good. It feels good. It doesn't feel like it's pay to win. Pardon me. It's just an overall great game. And I think Xbox users who are looking for a baseball game are going to be very, very happy with what the show offers. And Joey, on behalf of all of our PlayStation fandom, I'd like to welcome you to MLB The Show.
Yeah, I'm stoked for this, and I think it's a huge win overall. I mean, John, like you said, the baseball metrics in general are much lower when it comes to younger generations. Then when you look at baseball games, like I don't think Xbox has had a big one, like not arcadey, like an actual simulation baseball game since I want to say like MLB, I don't even know, MLB 12 or something, MLB 2K12, MLB 2K14, I don't even know, somewhere around that range, I believe. You can double check it. But it's been a hot minute. I actually played competitively back in MLB 2K9. And then from there, I hadn't really touched too many baseball games much at all when it came to the Xbox platform. The biggest issue was that the audience was so split. When you look at FIFA, again, there's no crossplay, which is a super bummer. But on a professional scale, you have everyone playing the same game for the most part. When it comes to FIFA, NHL, NBA 2K, again, different editions, no crossplay, but it's the same basic game. When it came to the baseball professional scene, I was a top 500 player when it came to MLB 2K9, but again, you're not including everyone on PlayStation in the show. And then when you look at the show, when you look at historical champions when it comes to sport-based titles, Xbox is typically winning a lot of those simulation sport-based titles. So does the show have the best players playing as well? And that's where the argument ended up coming up with baseball, and it kind of fell flat as a competitive title as a result. Because not only do you have a smaller audience, but now you have both of your big audiences playing a completely different game that, yes, it's baseball, and yes, the general idea is the same, but the mechanics are very different between the two games. So there's no real full-on competition, and you don't, again, I am no way a proponent of console wars, but you don't even get that kind of console war stimulation between it, where like at a FIFA tournament, you have your Xbox players and your PlayStation players, and they're like, hey, let's just go head-to-head on each other's consoles and see who ends up being the best. And that's something you could never really have in MLB because the games are so different. So hopefully with it coming out here, I think eventually it might come to Switch as well with this being a move. Maybe eventually you see it on PC too. I don't know if it's already there, but I hope this is the beginning of it branching out more and more. And I think the crossplay aspect is huge here because now not only do you have those bragging rights in major tournaments, but you can come in with those bragging rights on the console. Yeah, maybe you have a bit of lag on those bragging rights as well, but it will come in. You'll have that support from both consoles. And again, it does add to that player base as well. So I don't know, maybe there's a few thousand people online and you're having issues getting games within your particular ELO or MMR. Now you have that Xbox audience as well that can help balance that matchmaking out a bit more too. So I think this is a huge win for everyone, PlayStation, Xbox, MLB as well. And I think it's going to be a big win for gamers.
Yeah, so just to kind of go over the exclusive licensing for Major League Baseball for these video games, EA had it until 2005. When Take-Two Interactive signed the exclusive deal with Major League Baseball and created the 2K series for MLB. That lasted to 2012 when Sony was given the rights to Major League Baseball as well. So really, go back to 2012 was the last time Xbox really had a simulation baseball game. So, 8-9 years, if you're a baseball fan, but you're also in the Xbox ecosystem, you would have to make a separate $200-$400 investment just to play baseball on a simulation title if you really wanted to do that. And Joey, I love me some baseball. If I was in the Xbox ecosystem, there is no way I'm dropping $400+ just to play a baseball game. Now, I do know some people who did do it. I think they're crazy, but good for them. They have the money to do it, but there's no way I think the average typical gamer would drop that kind of money just to play one title.
And the other thing here, and again, guys, not to spend a ton more time on this for the listeners, because we are running a bit on the longer side. The other thing is the sales, John. They've been terrible for even MLB The Show. I mean, you look at it, and I think I'm looking at just 2018 numbers. They've sold 1.6 or 1.06 million, so just over 1 million copies of the 2018 version of MLB The Show. Again, a highly acclaimed game. It does very well critically. Fans love it. But you're only on one platform, and you're on one platform with a declining generation of real interest in baseball. So I think bringing it to Xbox, bringing it hopefully potentially to Nintendo Switch and PC later down the road. Again, I don't know if it completely mobilizes your numbers and makes them that much bigger, but it is one of those things to consider as you bring it to more platforms. It could breathe some light not only into the gaming aspect of it, but hopefully the sport as well on a younger age level.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an uphill battle for MLB to engage those younger audience, but this is a step in the right direction by opening it up to, obviously to both of the best-selling consoles in North America right now. your traditional consoles. I'm not going to throw a Switch in there with Xbox and PlayStation. So I think it's a solid move, step in the right direction. MLB has a long way to go, though. Let's not sit here and act like they finally caught up. They are still light years behind everyone else, but they are slowly starting to realize how to turn their computer on. So hopefully once they have that figured out, they can figure out how to find the start menu on Windows next.
Absolutely. And last few things on this, John, just to capitalize on what you just said there. The other thing is the esports scene. So again, they're behind when it comes to FIFA, when it comes to all these other major sport titles. But now having cross-platform really capabilities as far as saves as well as cross-play enabled at the beginning here does already put them a step ahead of FIFA, NHL, NBA 2K. None of those games have that actually in there right now. So while NBA 2K has a very great established league out there, FIFA is the biggest sports title worldwide. None of them have crossplay yet, so this could be a space for MLB to really diversify itself as well as get a potential esports scene really kicking off pretty well off to the start. Last but not least, they're going to tease a collector's edition. It will be revealed on Wednesday, February 3rd. We believe it will be the Jackie Robinson edition with a little bit of a 42 theme going on, with 4-day early access starting on April 16th to play the game 4 days earlier than those who just buy the regular edition with Tatis on the cover. And the next-gen upgrade will also be included with this. This is going to play similarly to what we saw at the Kobe Bryant edition of NBA 2K, where the last generation will only be available for the new generation. It depends on what system you're on, the type of architecture. But if you want that next-gen copy, so if you're originally going to buy it for your Xbox One or PS4 and you want to be able to upgrade it later on in the year when there's more availability of those new consoles, you will have to get the Jackie Robinson edition to be able to do that without buying another game in and of itself.
Now, side note, I do actually highly recommend the Jackie Robinson version. I've gotten that version the last several years when it comes out. Yeah, it's great because you get the early access. If you like playing online, it definitely gives you a strategic advantage. You get a ton more packs and everything. And really, when you break it down, you actually save a ton of money by going with the Jackie Robinson edition because of all the bonus items you end up getting, those packs to help build your team from the get-go. But if you're not an online player, then it's not worth it. It definitely isn't. But if you're an online player and you're excited for the show and you want to build your ultimate baseball team, Jackie Robinson is definitely the way to go. It's going to save you a ton of money in the long run.
And you guys can slide into more information about that edition later on this week. Wednesday, February 3rd is when all that will become public. Blooper Team's newest horror title, The Medium, came out this past week on January 28th, and it has already recouped all of its production and marketing costs back in the first week of the game's release. Now, again, guys, this game is not reviewing the greatest. I think last I checked on Metacritic, it was like 73 or 74. It's one of those games that has certain parts that are very good. In particular, the sound design is being praised very highly. A lot of people saying it has some of the best sound design in gaming in the last decade or so. Gareth Coker being one of those voices, as one of the greatest sound designers out there in gaming right now. On top of that, you do have some really good stuff coming out as far as the capabilities of using that next-gen hardware to procedurally generate different environments as well as run two environments simultaneously. Big stuff there as far as tech goes. The biggest news, though, and why we're touching on this, John, this is a game that launched on Game Pass for Xbox consoles and PC on day one. But on top of that, in just like 2 or 3 days, it already recouped back all of its value. So we're saying a game that, again, is free for players on Game Pass for PC and console still found a way to make back all of its value, plus include all of these new players from this particular service.
Hey, must be doing something right. Again, horror games are a very specific genre of gamers. It is definitely a targeted base, but it's an enthusiastic base. So to see that base come out and really support a horror title like The Medium, it makes a whole lot of sense. It's not surprising that it made its money back, but what is surprising is how fast it did. That just goes to show you that, a well-made game with hype can get you money, and who knows? Maybe they don't have to do refunds because the game doesn't work on backwards compatible consoles. Who knows?
Absolutely. So we'll have to go ahead and see how that plays out. But again, I think it's one of those big praises to Game Pass. A lot of people worry what it means for developers if they put their game on there on launch. Will they recoup the cost? So far, we've seen a lot of games recoup that cost. In particular, this being, some people argue AAA, some people argue high AA, but it is a game from Blooper Team that was highly really sought after at the beginning with that next-gen tech involved, and still ended up making quite a few sales, even being on that service day one. Halo Infinite, we saw an Inside Infinite update. This is going to be the new monthly update coming out from 343 Industries. It dropped, I believe it's going to be the last Thursday of every month going forward, but the January edition came out, and we got some good details from the Sandbox team. For those of you who don't know what a sandbox is, it's just the thing you play in as a child where you go ahead and throw sand at your brother and sister. Just kidding, guys. In gaming, sandbox, the term is responsible for creating the weapons and tools that you'll be using in this particular game, being Halo Infinite. So if you're someone who jumps into that game, you want to play your assault rifle, your sniper rifle, your shotgun, this is the team developing those weapons, cleaning them up, making them look good, as well as making them play well. So diving into it just a bit, John, and we can discuss this. Again, running a bit long on today's show, so we won't go too deep as we originally expected to, but we will be talking about Infinite quite a bit over the next couple months. One of the biggest things here that came out is Infinite will be the biggest support and commitment to any Halo game as of yet. Just looking at the basics of this, it's very easy to tell that this will be the case. One, this is the first Halo game to release simultaneously on console and PC. Two, this is going to be a 10-year planned game. So this is not just let's go into Halo 6, into Halo 7, into Halo 8, like we see with Call of Duty every year. This is going to be a game as a platform for 10 years moving forward. So it's going to have a full campaign on day one, fully supported multiplayer on day one, but there will be big content plans for it over the next 10 years, pretty much lasting the whole console generation. As a gamer, as someone who loves esports, I'm super stoked for that. My biggest drawback from like Call of Duty esports, for example, and John feels similarly from our conversations, is the fact that it changes every single year. Like, yes, it does keep things fresh here and there for the audience, but it also allows for connections to have a hard time being made between those audience members as well. As maybe John Smith is really good at Call of Duty World at War and then comes out the next game and he's not great at Modern Warfare 2, and then he has to drop off that roster. And that's kind of what we're seeing a little bit with the transition right now in the Call of Duty League into the new title of the Cold War. So hopefully with this being a 10-year commitment, we'll see some bigger orgs. Cloud9 has already bought in. Team Envious has bought in. So hopefully a few more of those big name orgs like a Fnatic, a G2, a Team Liquid will be willing to buy into Halo, knowing that it is going to be a long-term project as both a game and an esport. Set of revamped developer tools will be coming out as well. So when you look at stuff like League of Legends, how quickly they can tune characters from patch to patch every week or two, you're going to be seeing something similar here in Halo. Probably not as dramatically, as they're not going to have a roster of 140 some champions nowadays in League of Legends. This will purely be gun based. So probably much littler tuning, but they will be able to make that very swiftly and hopefully on a weekly basis if any tuning does need to take place. The sandbox will see constant updates in general, like we were just saying, and the meta will evolve because of that. So again, similar to League of Legends, CSGO, as guns get buffed, as different changes get made, the meta will shift as well. So it will be, again, like a living organism style of game in that live service genre. And on top of that, the AI is much smarter in this one as well for PvE fans. That should be exciting to behold. So, John, we have some other stuff here, weapons, equipment, vehicles, controls, and all that to dive into. But what are your thoughts in general of Halo taking this new approach as opposed to being just another serial title in the series, but rather approaching it almost like a live service game in the aspect that they're saying it's going to last 10 years in and of itself?
I don't want to like curse it or anything, but, you know, this is kind of like the pattern we've seen with these kind of themed games where, you know, you take a look at your Destinies, your No Man's Skies, your Anthems, if you will. Again, not trying to curse it, but these are all games that were built for the long term. These are all games that were built as a essentially a foundation that they wanted to build upon for that 10 plus years. Now, I think Halo is going to be more than capable of doing this. I think 343 is going to be absolutely fantastic doing this. But you know, you're not going to have, I really think that they will be successful at building this as a platform for that 10 plus years. I don't see them making the same mistakes that Anthem, a Destiny, a No Man's Sky made. Obviously, that's the reason why we're seeing a delay already on it. You know, the backlash, if you will. I'm even hesitant to call it backlash because of the graphics from the demo that we saw. You know, that just goes to show you that they do take community opinion into account. They're willing to work on it. They're willing to make the game, you know, what it is. Like, it's a great game for the community. Halo's got a lot riding on this. It's a legendary game series. It's a title that spans generations. It's not a Destiny. It's not an Anthem in that sense. there's a lot to lose if this game flops like a Destiny 2, and an Anthem, and a No Man's Sky. So yeah, I mean, I think from what we've seen, it's a great start. And I think they're setting themselves up for success in the future by making these changes now before the game comes out, and setting themselves up to grow instead of setting themselves up to patch and fix for the next 2-3 years. They're going to be able to hit the ground running and make this game into a great title down the future.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of potential. And you mentioned some very interesting ones, Anthem, Destiny. I think the biggest difference between that and this one is they are more PvE focused when it comes down to it. Halo a bit more on that PvP side. So while there is a comparison there, I think you can also pull the comparison a bit with League of Legends and CSGO, two games that are a bit more PvP focused, but also long-term and have been successful. So it can go either way. It could be one of those games like an Anthem or No Man's Sky where it needs some kind of revamp. I would hope a game with this budget and with this big of a development team does not end up in that same situation. But as John said, it is a possibility. And then on the other side, you do have stuff like League of Legends that maybe they didn't think was going to be as successful as it currently is. Same with CSGO, but years down the line, it's still being supported. It's still seeing changes. Maybe some people aren't as happy with the balance changes and the timing of those changes, but they are being made and the audience is quite active for both those games as well. So for me, I think the biggest difference is Halo is coming from being that serial title and changing to a live service title. So I think some people who just enjoy, let me run through the Halo multiplayer, let me play it a few times on co-op and play a little PvP here and there. Now they have this idea of coming into something that is live service. Again, I think it really could do well. I think it comes down to how you can do the DLC. People enjoy DLC in Halo. I don't think many people enjoy paying for DLC. Halo players did, though. They bought multiplayer maps. They bought new content. And I think that's something that maybe you make as DLC. Maybe you make it as free downloads to a live service game. But I'm curious to see how all that's going to translate and how they can keep really the players around with now potentially the biggest player base in Halo history with it coming to PC day one as well. Diving a bit deeper into the blog because, guys, I love this blog and I think it's great for someone who loves to read, but it is very wordy and there are very few pictures, so there's a lot of depth here. So just to hit a couple more topics that were discussed, as far as weapons and equipment, weapons will carry different damage types. So they're further expanding on the idea of projectiles like plasma, bullets. The fuel rod cannon had a different type of ammo in it. I'm curious to see if new weapons also carry some kind of new ammunition. The Forerunner stuff could run on light. I really don't know, but they're going to expand on the idea of these different projectiles. On top of that, equipment and multiplayer. John, I am stoked for this change. Equipment and multiplayer will be earned and found via map combat and or finding play space items, similar to Halo 3. I did not like Halo Reach because of the class system. I didn't like the idea of starting out with a class, whether it be your shield, like ground and pound shield, sprint, whatever it is. I liked Halo 3 where you had to pick up the overshield or pick up the invis or pick up whatever ability you're going to end up using. I really like the idea of going back in this change, and I think it will be pretty positive with both Halo audiences. One, for competitive play, it allows a lot more balance, but two, it allows a lot more strategy as well. It's going to be played around those particular buffs as opposed to everyone starting out with sprint or everyone starting out with jetpacks. Now they have to play around those buffs to acquire them on the map.
Yeah, it's going to have to make them think outside the box too. Based upon, what perk is going to be on the map, they're going to be able to think fast and say, oh, if it is invisibility, how are we going to use this to our advantage now? Or, oh, we don't have invisibility, now we just have sprint. Okay, how are we going to protect the fast speedy boy? If it's, it makes sense. It adds that element of surprise, but also you can have a set game plan going into these games, but because there is that element of what perk are we going to get, we have to fight around this. It causes you to think on your feet a lot quicker and have multiple strategies and be good at implementing those strategies at the right time. So I like that switch too, Joey. I do think the Halo 3 version is definitely the way to go for that.
I also like the idea of the gamer tag Fast Speedy Boy.
Fast Speedy Boy, there you go.
It's quite creative. Vehicles, they tease the return of a fan favorite vehicle. We don't know what it is. Some people are speculating the forklift because it was seen in a screenshot. Other people speculating the Brute Chopper, with Brutes kind of coming in with a bit of a heavy presence here in the new game. They also tease a new vehicle that would sit somewhere in the power level between the Warthog, which is kind of like a Jeep with a machine gun or a Gauss cannon, or the Scorpion, which is a tank. So somewhere between those two in terms of power level for that potential new vehicle. Looking at controls is our last bit here. Players will be able to fully rebind and remap controls on both controller and mouse and keyboard. Again, this is something that's been around for a little bit in PC with the Master Chief Collection coming out, but now on mouse, instead of just choosing a couple presets, you now have the ability to completely customize your controls. Again, this to me, it's partly looking at the player level of how happy players can be and how they can really customize things, not only their Spartan's armor, but their controls. I think on an esports level, it also allows that competition to come up to a higher level too. And PC and console will both have dedicated teams to make sure the game feels smooth on both. So this is not a console game being ported to PC. This is a game being built from the ground up for both platforms. And they will both have teams supporting both platforms as well. So if the PC has a particular bug, it will be a PC team dealing with that bug versus console. They're obviously going to communicate with one another, but it's not just console first, PC second. This will be fully integrated and fully supported on both platforms day one. John, if you just want to pull up that quick screenshot, one last bit for this Halo bit of news. Again, guys, we'll be diving into this month to month as we get these new updates. But just a quick look for those still with us live tonight on the weapons compared from their original designs to the new designs here in Halo Infinite. Do you remember to take the teaser off this time?
I did. I have a little note. You can't see. It's right here off camera.
Absolutely beautiful. So this is your cover art here from Halo Combat Evolved, the original game, with Halo Infinite's cover art. And then diving into the weapons here, this is a look at the Needler, the original design versus the new design. Of all the guns, John, I think this is one of my favorites as far as the design, really adaptation from the original game to the new one. The colors are just so vibrant, as well as the sharpness of the image as well.
Yeah, as someone who trolled dual wielding the Needler back in the day, I like this change. I think it looks great, and I can't wait to go dualies on the Needler again.
I don't know why that does not surprise me. And our next gun in the line, I'm so excited for Halo. This is your basic assault rifle, so very plain and clean there in game one. Again, we're looking at a 20-year difference between these games, so obviously the graphics will be different. But again, the level of detail, I think the scope looks really nice. The ammo counter looks very nice, and the back snout as well. Again, I think every one of these designs is clean. This one not quite as vibrant as the Needler, but a nice, clean, basic assault rifle design. I have no idea what's next, but you can roll the tape here. This is your sniper rifle. So again, they kept a lot of this the same. It does have a little bit of a longer kick stop. It looks like the scope is a bit longer as well. Again, it's just a cleaner cut version, much more detailed. You can see a little bit in the screenshots. The more close up you get, the more detailed graphically it gets as well. But again, I think it is a nice clean transition for that basic sniper rifle for the Halo Spartans. Next.
Oh, you want me to go to the other tweet?
Oh, yeah, we can just look at it quickly. I think it's the battle rifle and maybe the rocket launcher.
It's the Burr 55 up against the Burr 75.
Oh, the Burr. Aaron Burr.
Burr.
Yeah, so this is your battle rifle, probably my favorite gun in the game. Not super big changes as far as everything goes, but definitely a graphical upgrade. And I believe the scope has been changed slightly as well. And then what else do we got here? Is it the rocket launcher?
Hydra.
Hydra. That is an old weapon, I believe. So Hydra coming out. This one actually does look like it had some significant changes. The barrel looking very differently. It looks very much more futuristic to me in this as well.
I'm not going to lie. I may like the original of this more.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I like the kick, like the, I don't know, the handle, I guess.
Yeah.
A little bit more. But I do like the front of the new one much more.
Yeah, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. I think the original on this one takes the cake.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see how it plays in game later on this year. That's the last one, right?
Yeah, it's the last one.
Okay, so no rocket launcher this time. You guys will have to wait for that one. But just some cool little pics of the original game 20 years ago versus at least what is currently in line as that Infinite design. Again, I believe we already mentioned this, but if we haven't, all of the guns are in the game. Everything launch-wise is already in the game to my knowledge. It's just been polishing for about a year now, or will be polishing for a year by release in November. So we'll have to see when everything gets officially announced, if that November release date does become official. But it does sound like they are on track to release here in 2021. And John, I am stoked for some Halo customs and multiplayer later this year.
Let's go.
Animal Crossing New Horizons is the first console exclusive title to sell over 30 million units. This was both on John and I's Game of the Year list, and it sold these 30 million units in the calendar year of 2020, selling 31.18 million by the end of December 2020. A huge sales chart for Animal Crossing, a huge sales chart for Nintendo as well, which just seems to dominate. New PlayStation 5, new Xbox Series X and S, whatever. Nintendo Switch says, just give me the top sales every single month anyway. Just continues to sell off the shelves. The game's doing it as well. So a huge shout out to Animal Crossing. It did not win Game of the Year, but again, it's numbers like these that why we praise them so much. The game in and of itself is innovative. It's a way to bring back a classic game and kind of give it a new twist. And on top of that, you're coming back, you're selling a ton of units, you're doing it well, you're providing quarterly updates, and this game just continues to thrive for the Nintendo platform. Upcoming, a new Super Bowl theme mode, Gridiron, is headed to Rocket League. John, you are a big Rocket League fan. This one's coming out on February 2nd and is set to run through February 8th, so about a week-long challenge here. A number of event challenges will be tied into it as well. I really don't know too much of what the game mode is going to entail. I don't know if Rocket League has released a video yet, but the idea of it tying into the Super Bowl is kind of a cool idea for Rocket League to capitalize on.
Yeah, it's smart. We've seen the success of other games join up with IRL events. Fortnite really is one that comes to mind with, like new Marvel movies coming out in the MCU, Star Wars, The Mandalorian. There is always a big bump in people playing your game and people using microtransactions to get certain limits and time skims. Yeah, I mean, because FOMO is real. But also because, there are a lot of people that do like football that play Rocket League as well. As Rocket League, Joey, as we've said for years, really is the crossover esport that will essentially lead the way to bring traditional sports fans to the world of esports. So I think it's a great partnership with a Super Bowl themed mode. Joining Rocket League, I think it's a very smart move, and I look forward to playing and purchasing some stuff on the 2nd.
Absolutely. A couple other notices for this week. Games coming out. PlayStation exclusive Destruction All-Stars is going to drop, I believe, tomorrow, February 2nd. On top of that, if you're a PlayStation Plus subscriber, I believe this is included, along with some other cool games this month, like Control from Remedy is in there. I believe the Ultimate Edition of that, as well as one other game that is escaping me at the moment. If you're an Xbox Game with Gold subscriber, Gears 5 is also included in the February game titles, as well as the original Indiana Jones on Xbox, a few other games in there. There's one other one that dropped today that I can't think of off the top of my head, but some really good PlayStation Plus games and games with Gold for Xbox this month. Definitely check those out. And Neo, that collection is coming out on February 5th as well, so keep an eye out for that one this week too if you're interested in the Neo collection. Also, guys, Mass Effect fans, whether it be the new Mass Effect or the Legendary Edition, keep an eye on Mass Effect social channels this week. There will be more news dropping. I believe it starts dropping tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, but keep an eye on those channels. And last but not least, we touched on it last week, but a Final Fantasy 14 online showcase is scheduled for Friday, February 5th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. It will be broadcast in both Japanese and English. I don't really know what it's going to talk about. I would assume the next expansion, as well as the possibility of it coming to Xbox consoles as well. So keep an eye out for that one. Again, Friday the 5th. Moving into a couple last esport updates, CSGO, Virtus Pro took down Fnatic in the grand finals of CS Summit this week. In particular, a big win for Virtus Pro is one of the top tier events of the year. But on top of that, Fnatic came into the grand finals with the debut for one of their new players, Jaquinho. He came in, played pretty well overall. They did find their way to a grand final, which is a huge win for a team adding a new player in. In the end, they did fall into the experience of Virtus Pro, but a big shout out to both those teams making it to the final there. League of Legends will wrap us up today, John. We had the lock-in tournament ending this past weekend. We did see Team Liquid take down, I believe it was Evil Geniuses to kick things off, or it might have been Cloud9 and 100 Thieves first. Cloud9 with the reverse sweep in that one for the 3-2 first semifinal win. Then TL doing their job and taking down Evil Geniuses to make it to the grand final before we saw the matchup between Team Liquid and Cloud9. Last week, we got some speculation on this one. Some people said, there's no way it goes 5 games. Other people saying, it might go 5 games. We ended up both taking 5 games in this one. I did take TL to win 3-2. You took C9 3-2 in this one. In the end, we both hit 5 games head on, as we've done very well with predictions in 2020 and so far in 2021. In the end, my TL prediction did win, though, as they take this one 3-2. TL won the first 2 games. Cloud9 did look like they were on their way to another reverse sweep, as Cloud9 fashion seems to do in League of Legends, but they were stopped just short as Alphari powered through for Team Liquid in Game 5.
It's a pointless preseason tournament. It means absolutely nothing. You don't even get a banner hung up in the LCS studio for this, Joey. I'm not even worried about it. It's fine. It's fine.
I mean, it's like I was saying to you before, and again, I don't want to elaborate too much on this, but I think one of the big things with this as well, yes, it doesn't really mean too much, but it could be a wake-up call for Cloud9 as well. With Perks coming over, I think a lot of people had very high expectations. And again, I don't think they're wrong. I think Perks is an incredible player. I think Cloud9 in general is going to be a very good team this year, but it could have been that wake-up call they needed prior to the season to say, hey, Team Liquid is on our level. Team Liquid is very good. We're going to have to continue to improve as a team to be able to take them down. It's not going to be a 2020 spring split all over again, where Cloud9 just runs rampant. They have this talented mid laner in Perks, or talented AD carry moving back to mid lane in Perks. They are actually going to have to try, as this Team Liquid squad is very talented as well. Over to the LEC, John, just to look at a couple of the standings here. So after last week, our new standings are Rogue on top at 5-0. G2 Esports actually losing a game this week. They dropped to 4-1 after losing to Schalke. Mad Lions and Schalke tied at 3-2 for that third place spot. Then we drop down to the good old ties in EU. Again, these do spread out a little bit more as the season goes on, but for now we have 4 teams sitting in 5th, SK Gaming at 2-3, Excel, Fnatic, and Misfits all at that same record, before we drop down to 9th, where we find Astralis at 1-4, tied up with Team Vitality. So in the end, this last week was pretty spicy. I think our game of the week ended up being the game of the week. That was Fnatic versus Mad Lions. Mad Lions definitely taking that win in a pretty dominant fashion toward the second half. Fnatic tried to take a few fights that they really shouldn't have. And on top of that, the shot calling of Kaiser, the support for Mad Lions, was quite good overall. He ended up shot calling some very nice team fights where Mad Lions just got out with barely any life left on a few of their players, but they were able to clean up the Fnatic side, take the objectives they needed to, and in the end, take the win as well. Looking ahead to next week, John, is there a particular matchup that stands out to you for this LEC side as we head into week 3 while LCS is going to head into week 1?
Let's make sure I have the schedule up here on stream for people, our viewers. So Joey, I do have to point out the obvious here, and I apologize for having to point out the obvious. Joey, Reckless is coming home, and home does not mean he's rejoining Fnatic. No, he is leading G2, Joey, against Fnatic there on Saturday the 6th, 3 p.m. Eastern time. That's going to be spicy, Joey, and I'm in. I'm all in there for it.
Yeah, I hate to be that guy. Like, I really don't like to pick Fnatic every single week, but John, I think this is your game of the week again, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, looking at all these other matchups, it's either like a high-level team versus a low-level team. I think you could argue that Misfits versus Excel and SK versus Mad Lions could be somewhat interesting. Misfits being the stronger team, Mad Lions being the stronger team. But Excel and SK have both shown that they can take on some of these heavier weighted teams, particularly if their star mid laners, the new mid laners in Cheklalad and Blue, can pop off for their respective teams. It could get a bit interesting, but overall, again, I think if you look at weighted matchups, Fnatic versus G2, 2 potential top 3 teams here, could be the match of the week once again. Fnatic has shown very, very strong improvements over the last couple weeks. Again, they're losing to Mad Lions here toward the end, but it wasn't a terrible match. They just have to take a few team fights differently. On the other side for G2, they've looked absolutely incredibly strong all split long, but they did end up losing to Schalke this last week, showing that even gladiators can bleed a little bit here and there. So again, G2 does their trolling thing here and there. Fnatic goes a little inty as far as over-aggression from players like Buipo and Hillsong at times. But overall, if these 2 teams are on, John, this could be an absolutely incredible matchup. And again, I'm very curious to kind of get an interview inside Reckless's head here, going back to that former team, the team he spent, 6-7 years on in general.
Oh, it's going to be good. It's going to be, Joey, I hate to say it, I think I'm Team Reckless this go around.
Team Reckless this go around. Well, if you got to guess which team I am, guys, there is the giant logo behind
Manchester City.
I do love me some Reckless, but I do have to side with Fnatic on this one. If I had to predict, though, John, I think I would predict G2 in this one. I mean, their roster is stacked. Fnatic is very good, but I think it's going to take more time for that roster to come online, especially switching out your 2 carry players in the AD carry and mid positions. While G2 does end up switching out their AD carry, again, I think it is an upgrade overall for Perks. really, Perks was great as a mid laner, but I think Reckless is a better AD carry mechanically speaking. So while you do lose some of that leadership and shot calling that Perks did bring to the table, I think Reckless mechanically does bring a lot of skill there. So we'll have to see how it all translates. I think the bot lanes in general, Reckless versus Mickey versus the bot lane of Upset and Hillsong, as long as they don't get a little into song here and there, it could be an absolutely incredible matchup with a lot of blood flowing early in that one as well. We did not preview LCS. Do you want to just quickly do that before we wrap up? Because it is week 1. LCS doing their thing and kind of beating to their own drum here, going a little bit later. And we actually can't do it yet because they have not posted.
Doesn't have the schedule up.
See, Riot Games. Hello.
See, here you go, Riot. You're a multi-million-dollar company, right? You're backed by Tencent, and you can't even give us the schedule for week 1. Come on.
Rip.
Just tune in Thursday. Hopefully by then, fingers crossed, Riot will have a schedule up there. That'd be nice, right?
Yeah, I want to say it's up in the fantasy app, so it might be out there somewhere, but yeah, not on their website as of yet. So we'll have to check back in for that. But again, guys, LCS does kick off this week. It is week 1. LEC heading into week 3, and you do have that, as John calls it, return to Fnatic matchup for Reckless, where he does return home, but as an opposing player. So go ahead and check those out, as well as some other good League of Legends action. We have Rainbow Six starting up soon. Valorant still going on with their open qualifiers for their new season as well. Lots of great esports and gaming action ahead. Again, keep an eye on that Mass Effect Twitter channel this week ahead and the social media in general, as there could be some more information coming out for Mass Effect fans too.
Well, Nation, that will do it for this edition of LvLUp Live. But before you go, head over to patreon.com/OTN and consider becoming a part of the Overtime Network. In return, you'll get access to exclusive content that nobody else in the world can get unless they are a part of OTN Media. If you have not already done so, make sure you follow the show here on Twitch to catch your next episode of LvLUp Live. If you listen to the show on our podcast feed, leave us a review. LvLUp Podcast is available on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and Google Play. We would love to hear from you. In fact, Joey, we love to hear from our community so much. We have other ways for them to reach out to us. Joey, what are some of those ways?
Absolutely. LvLUp Nation, first kick things off by heading over to Twitter and find us at LvLUp Live. That is LvLUp Live. In addition to that, you can follow the umbrella company OTN Media on Twitter and Facebook, as well at OTN Media, and on Instagram at OTN_media. Last but not least, hit us up with a follow on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/OTN Media. We broadcast LvLUp Mondays and Thursdays live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, as well as a number of other streams throughout the week.
You gotta wait for the drop. Make sure you tune in this Thursday, February 4th, as we cover the latest and greatest in gaming and esports news. Do your ears and eyes a favor and slap that sub and follow button to know when the next episode of LvLUp Live is ready for your viewing pleasures. We will catch you all on Thursday. Have a great week. Remember, be nice to your fellow gamers online. And as always, level up.